Somebody in here today has been carrying burdens too big, wrestling with needs too great, trying to hold it all together with hands that were never meant to carry the weight. But I came to tell you this morning, you were never meant to be your own provider. You were never meant to meet every need, because there is a God. Oh yes, there is a God who sits high but looks low. And he said, cast your cares on me because I care for you. Today, I want to talk to some folks who've been fighting silent battles, smiling in public but struggling in private. I want to speak to those who've been trying to solve spiritual hunger with worldly bread. You don't need another shortcut, another scheme, another sleepless night. You need to give your needs to God, because when you put it in his hands, he will provide. Not maybe, not sometimes, not if you're lucky, but he will provide. If you're ready to shift the weight off your shoulders and onto the one who promised to carry it, then let's go there today, because breakthrough is on the other side of surrender. We live in a world that teaches us to hustle, to grind, to chase, to stretch ourselves thin just to make ends meet. Society tells us that if we don't do it, it won't get done. We're told to rely on connections, credentials, credit scores, and cleverness to get ahead. And while strategy and stewardship have their place, too many of us have reduced God to being just one of many resources, one option among others when things get tight. But let me tell you, God is not just another name on your list. He is not your backup plan. He is not your plan B when the bank says no. He is the source. Everything flows from him. Every breath you take, every opportunity that opens, every door that swings wide or stays shut, it's all in his hands. The cattle on 1,000 hills, his. The silver and the gold, his. The favor on your life that kept you when you didn't even know you were being kept. That wasn't your job, your degree, or your savings account. That was God. Too often, we put our faith in the channel and forget the source. But if the job closes, if the economy dips, if the relationship dries up, God is still able to provide, because the channel may change, but the source stays the same. When Elijah was fed by the ravens, that wasn't because the ravens were generous. It was because God commanded them to feed him. When the brook dried up, the same God who fed him with birds sent him to a widow in Zarephath. And when she said, I have nothing but a little flour and oil, God showed up again and said, I'm not asking what you have. I'm showing you who I am. You see, when you trust the source, you won't panic when the channels shift, because channels are temporary, but the source is eternal. Some of us have been giving our best energy, our best focus, and our deepest hope to temporary things, expecting permanent peace. But jobs can let you go, people can turn on you, markets can crash. Yet the source never runs dry. If he has to reroute it, he will. If he has to send a stranger to bless you, he will. If he has to make a way out of no way, he will. But you have to stop treating God like he's a last resort. You've got to stop talking to him only after the deal falls through or the doctor gives the diagnosis. God is not your side hustle. He is not your occasional counselor. He is not your Sunday only provider. He is the well that never runs dry, the bread that came down from heaven, the light in your darkest hour. He doesn't just give provision. He is provision. You've got to come back to a place where your confidence isn't in what's in your hand, but who's holding your future. When you recognize that he is the source, you stop begging and start believing. There is a divine principle woven all throughout Scripture. God doesn't bless what we cling to. He blesses what we release. The blessing is not in the grip. The blessing is in the give. Too many of us are asking God to multiply things we're still trying to control. We're praying for breakthrough while living in fear. We're holding back what little we have, trying to make it stretch while God is saying, if you would just surrender it, I'll show you what I can do with it. The little boy with the 5 loaves and 2 fish didn't feed the multitude until he gave it up. He didn't argue. He didn't negotiate. He didn't say, let me keep 1 loaf just in case. No, he placed it in the hands of Jesus. And when Jesus took it, blessed it, broke it, and gave it, it multiplied. It didn't multiply in the boy's hand. It didn't multiply in the disciples' doubt. It multiplied in surrender. God doesn't need much to do a miracle. He just needs you to trust him with what you've got. We're so busy waiting for abundance before we obey. But God says, obey and watch me bring the abundance. Some of you are holding your time, your talent, your treasure, your future, your dreams so tightly, afraid to let go because of how small it looks. But God doesn't multiply based on quantity. He multiplies based on faith. He's not asking you to fix it, stretch it, or figure it out. He's asking you to give it. Give it to him. There's a reason he asked Abraham to put Isaac on the altar. It wasn't because he wanted to take Isaac. It was because he wanted Abraham's trust. And when Abraham surrendered what was most precious to him, he found out that God had already prepared the ram in the thicket. Some of us are holding on to our Isaac, saying, God, you can have everything but this. And that's the very thing God is asking for, not to punish you, but to position you. Because when you surrender what's in your hand, you open yourself to what's in his hand. Your control is limiting his capacity. Your fear is blocking his flow. As long as you keep your hand closed, nothing can get in, but nothing can come out either. It's only the open hand, the surrendered heart, the yielded will. That becomes the place of multiplication. Surrender isn't weakness. Surrender is the strongest, boldest faith move you can make, because it says, God, I trust you more than I trust me. And when you do that, when you take your not enough and place it into the hands of the God who is more than enough, you give him permission to breathe on it. And once he breathes on it, the same thing that wasn't enough in your hand becomes overflow in his. What you surrender, God can bless, God can stretch, God can use, and God can multiply. Worry is not just a feeling, it's a form of focus. It's what happens when your heart starts magnifying the problem instead of magnifying your God. You see, worship is when you lift God above everything else. Worship is when you say, God, you are bigger than my bills, bigger than my doctor's report, bigger than my anxiety. But worry flips that. Worry says, this situation is so big, so overwhelming, so consuming, I don't know if even God can handle it. And whether we admit it or not, that's misplaced worship. When you worry, you are exalting your fear instead of your faith. You are meditating on the worst possible outcome. You are rehearsing defeat, playing it over and over in your mind like a broken record. You wake up with it. You go to bed with it. And somewhere in all that worry, you've stopped worshiping the one who has already promised to provide. That's not just stress, that's misplaced devotion. Jesus said, which of you by worrying can add a single hour to your life? Worry doesn't produce power, it drains it. It doesn't give you control. It robs you of peace. And yet, we treat worry like it's being responsible. We think, if I'm not worrying about it, I'm not taking it seriously. But the truth is, your worry won't change the outcome. Only your faith can do that. And faith can't rise while fear is sitting on the throne. Some of you have been kneeling at the altar of anxiety. You don't even realize it, but worry has become your daily ritual. You check your bank account more than you check your Bible. You listen to your fears more than you listen to God's promises. And every time you agree with worry, you're agreeing with a future where God doesn't show up. But I came to remind somebody today, God always shows up. He may not show up how you want, but he shows up right on time with everything you need. You've got to learn how to flip your worry into worship. You've got to take that same energy, that same intensity, that same focus, and turn it toward the throne of grace. When the enemy comes whispering lies, when he says, "You're not going to make it. Your family is going to fall apart. The money will run out." You lift your hands and say, "But my God shall supply all my needs according to his riches in glory." You start declaring truth over fear. You start singing praises when your circumstances say panic, because you cannot worry and worship at the same time. One will always silence the other, and you get to decide which one takes the stage. You can either stay up all night rehearsing what the enemy told you, or you can rest in the promise that God already has a plan. One is fear-based, the other is faith-fueled, and it's your choice which one you give your attention to. God is not obligated to fund your fantasy, but he is always faithful to provide for his purpose. Provision is connected to obedience. It doesn't follow emotion. It doesn't follow impulse. And it certainly doesn't follow convenience. It follows obedience. Some of us are asking God to provide for places he never sent us. We want heaven to pay the bill for decisions we made without prayer. But God provides in the path of purpose. If you want to walk in divine provision, you've got to be willing to walk in divine instruction. When God told Abraham to take Isaac up the mountain, he didn't tell him where the ram was. He just told him where to go. Abraham had to obey without details. He had to trust that if God required a sacrifice, God would also make a way. And it wasn't until Abraham raised the knife in obedience that God revealed the ram in the thicket. The provision didn't show up at the base of the mountain. It showed up on top. Some of you are standing at the bottom, waiting on the ram, but the ram is waiting on your yes. God doesn't release provision to spectators. He releases it to participants. You've got to move when he says move. You've got to give when he says give. You've got to step when you can't see the full staircase. We love the promise, but many don't want the process. We quote, "My God shall supply all my needs," but forget the condition that often precedes that supply: obedience. The widow in Zarephath obeyed the prophet and gave her last bit of flour and oil. And what looked like her last meal turned into her daily miracle. There's something powerful that happens when you align your life with God's voice. Obedience creates a flow. It opens the windows of heaven. It unlocks resources you didn't even know were available. God will touch hearts, shift circumstances, command ravens, and open doors. But you've got to move when he speaks. Some of you are asking God for rain, but you haven't dug a ditch. You want the overflow, but haven't prepared a place for it to land. You cannot separate provision from instruction. When Jesus told Peter to cast his net on the other side, Peter had already fished all night and caught nothing. But when he obeyed the word of the Lord, he caught so much fish that the net began to break. The difference wasn't in the water, it was in the word. Obedience to the word turned failure into overflow. Provision didn't come from more effort. It came from listening and responding to the command. We've got to stop treating obedience like it's optional. It's not a suggestion. It's the gateway to your breakthrough. You may not understand the command. You may not like the timing. It may stretch you, challenge you, or even scare you. But when God speaks, everything you need is wrapped up in your response. Provision is not delayed. It's waiting on your obedience. Fear will always try to talk you out of what faith is calling you into. Fear is a thief. It doesn't just steal your peace. It tries to steal your promise. It tells you you're not good enough. You don't have enough. You'll never be ready. You'll fail if you try. And if you listen to it long enough, you'll start forfeiting things God already laid aside for you. You'll stand at the edge of destiny and retreat, not because God said no, but because fear told you to back down. Fear builds invisible fences around wide open doors. It doesn't have to block the door. It just has to block your belief. But faith unlocks. Faith says, Even if I don't see it yet, I still believe. Faith looks fear in the face and walks forward anyway. Faith doesn't wait for comfort. Faith doesn't wait for confirmation from people. It moves when God speaks. Every blessing you're asking God for is sitting on the other side of an act of faith. You won't get there through wishing. You won't get there through playing it safe. You'll only get there by stepping out when it doesn't make sense. Look at the Israelites standing at the Red Sea. Pharaoh's army is behind them, water in front of them, and fear is breathing down their necks. But Moses lifts up his staff by faith, and the sea opens up. That water didn't move until someone had the faith to act. Fear said, "You're trapped." Faith said, "Watch God make a way." And when they walked through on dry ground, they learned something fear would have never taught them. God is still in control, even in chaos. Fear is loud, but it's a liar. It shouts worst-case scenarios. It reminds you of your past. It exaggerates your weakness. But faith speaks the truth. Faith says, "I am who God says I am. I can do what He's called me to do. I have what He says I have." Fear sees giants and runs. Faith sees giants and picks up a stone. David didn't beat Goliath because he was stronger. He beat him because he believed. And when you believe, you fight different. You walk different. You pray different. Because faith gives you access to what fear would have made you walk away from. So many people are living beneath their calling, not because God denied them, but because fear convinced them to settle. But the enemy can't have what belongs to you unless you hand it over. Don't forfeit your future because fear is whispering in your ear. You've got to stir up your faith. You've got to silence the inner critic and feed the inner champion. Faith isn't a feeling. It's a decision. It's choosing to trust God when it's uncomfortable, uncertain, or even painful. But the moment you move in faith, heaven moves with you. Doors open. Walls fall, chains break, miracles happen. Not because you had it all together, but because you dared to believe. And belief, rooted in faith, unlocks what fear has been trying to bury your whole life.